Hi everyone, I'm Tamara Makubanga. I am the founder and chief content officer here at Alaking Creatives. Welcome back to another discussion on the 50 digital marketing solutions that every business needs. Today I'm chatting with David. David, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Tamara. My name is David Harrismith. I'm the founder and CEO of Minivation, which is a regulatory compliance business that has a digital compliance officer, which I'm very pleased to talk to you about today.
Awesome. So could you please tell everyone exactly who is Minivation and what exactly do you do?
So simply put, Minivation provides legal protection and legal certainty for our clients when it comes to due diligence. And essentially what we provide is compliance by design. Now, the key thing to bear in mind is our target market and the people that we engage with are your regulated entities. So your banks and your asset managers and those kind of individuals. So it's not your general regulations around safety, health, and wellness and all that kind of stuff. It's more around the specific regulations required from what's known as an accountable institution. So if anyone out there is, and I'm pretty sure everyone's got a cell phone nowadays, when you get a cell phone contract, you go through RICA. They need to check that you are who you say you are. That's part of a due diligence process. As an example, it's the same in banking. You know, everyone gets these KYC SMSs saying your account's about to be frozen, right? Because you haven't been KYC'd again or something along those lines. It's that stuff. So that is the stuff that we deal with.
Okay, awesome. And what would you say is your unique selling position at Minivation?
So our proposition and what differentiates us in the market is that we've built a digital compliance officer. So essentially, we've taken all the really complex knowledge, skills, and know-how that is required to perform a due diligence exercise, whether it be enhanced due diligence or simplified due diligence, and we've built that into a digital brain. So it's a form of artificial intelligence, but it's actually part of artificial intelligence called augmented intelligence or intelligence augmentation. And really what that means is we use computers for what they're good at, which is crunching data, visualizing data, putting things in nice fancy formats and nice pretty reports and that kind of stuff. And then we let the people do what they're really good at, which is what they're trained to do. And that's to interpret the data, understand the data, and make informed decisions. So we marry the two together to get an optimal outcome.
Okay, nice. And what do you believe is the number one problem that you solve for your clients on a day-to-day basis?
That's quite an easy one, fortunately. Everyone hates compliance. Everyone hates due diligence. So the problem we solve on a daily basis is removing that friction. We make it easier for clients to do business with our clients.
Okay. And is this like pretty much every business? Like I know for my business, I don't even know if I'm compliant with anything right now. So like what type of businesses find that, okay, they actually need to pay attention to their compliance systems and all of that?
So good question. So our focus, as mentioned, I use the term accountable institutions, and that's actually a regulated term. It's a defined term. And in South Africa, an accountable institution is one that is either a bank, an asset manager, a life insurer, a real estate agent, or a law firm. So if your business is in one of those 5 categories, you are now defined as an accountable institution. And when one of those businesses does business with you, they need to perform a certain level of due diligence to know that you are who you say you are. So the one example that everyone understands, and it's the one that's been in place for the longest time, is for a bank account. So if you want to go and do banking with any bank and you want to open up a new bank account, the bank is going to ask you for proof of residence, your ID book, maybe a salary slip, maybe a report or an investment that you might have, or confirmation of previous bank that you were with or something along those lines. Those categories are called risk categories. And that bank will then say, well, based on your profile and who you are, you seem to be low risk, so we only need these 3 things from you. And once you've given those 3 things, they say, cool, we think you are who you say you are. We've been able to verify that and vet that, and here's your bank account. So that's really the simplest example of what due diligence is, and then the types of business that we'd work with. By the same token, and that's a big debate at the moment, especially for the real estate agents, is at what point does a client become a client? Because a real estate agent needs to do a due diligence on someone interested in buying a house. Now, if you've ever bought a house, that process isn't you wake up tomorrow and you go, I'm going to buy a house, and then off you go and you buy a house and you quickly pay cash for it, right? If only that worked that way. It doesn't quite work that way. So the debate at the moment, from what we've seen, is real estate agents are trying to work out at what point do they do due diligence on a client, because that client's actually going to now buy this house, because all of this relates to cost. And if they are doing everyone who comes into a show house and they due diligence everyone who comes in shows interest, that business or that real estate agency is going to go under very quickly, because they're spending all this money on due diligence and not getting any sales. So that is the work that we do, is we help businesses understand those complexities and those challenges. And then we perform a due diligence exercise based on their risk appetite and their risk-based approach, and give them an outcome which will allow them to make a decision as to whether or not they should enter into a business relationship with an individual or company.
Okay. And from your experience, okay, so would you say that companies that do not fall under any of those 5 categories that you mentioned, they don't necessarily have to worry, or do they still have to check for themselves online, their compliance?
Yeah, so from a compliant point of view, it comes down to appetite and the nature of the industry that you're in. So more and more what we're also seeing is professional services organizations, outsourcing businesses, large scale, specifically in the kind of IT space in South Africa, are needing to start to do like know your supplier, especially with the prevalence of corruption that we're seeing, across Africa. It's not just a South African issue. There's lots of challenges with that, and a lot of big large organizations are wanting to check, if we're onboarding a supplier, is the supplier related to someone in my company? Because there might be a problem here, right? Municipalities are also looking at this stuff. So they need to make sure that the members of the municipality aren't onboarding their brothers and sisters and all that kind of stuff, and the bad things that we've heard in the press. So we help guard against that stuff. So although for them it may not be specifically legislated or regulated, it is becoming good governance and a good principle, and I suppose a good stopgap and a good check for businesses to actually put in place to make sure that they know who they're doing business with. The other side of it is know your employee. So a lot of people also, if you go and look and getting a job for any of the large corporates, they do a certain amount of background checking. And that in a way is a form of due diligence. So as much as there are institutions in the country and elsewhere where it is legislated and regulated that you must, and you will be audited, and if you're found not to have done the right due diligence, you can get a big fine, and the fines can be very big. For say legislated organizations or industries outside of that, we're seeing more and more start to apply good governance related to due diligence, because they know it helps manage the risk. So in answer to your question, there are pockets of that we're seeing, especially in big corporate, where they're looking to safeguard and protect their reputation, their integrity, and obviously from a market risk point of view, they need to make sure that they're seen to be running the business efficiently and effectively and doing all the right stuff. And this is a good way to actually help with that.
Okay, and just as a clarifying question, does compliance come from the big corporates, or does it come from you as the supplier?
No, so if I understand your question correctly, so it's around providing the information to be compliant or the requirement to be compliant. So on the one hand, if it's providing the information, so what would happen is a business, so let's use one of the non-regulated entities. Let's say you're an IT business and you want to do due diligence on your suppliers. You as an organization would say, for us to get a level of comfort of who we're dealing with, we need to know who the directors of Alaking creators are. We need to know what your registered address is, and we need to know the bank that you bank with and your bank account number. So you provide as a supplier to that business, you would then provide that documentation. They can then go through the digital compliance officer, enter in that information that you've provided, and we can verify it. Because in this business, there's two things. You either obtain information or you verify information. And from a platform and a solution standpoint, we can do either, but it's based on the client's risk-based approach, because you define your risk and you understand your clients best and you understand who you're dealing with, or you understand your suppliers best. And based on that, you say, for our suppliers, we want to do these 3 checks. If something comes out of these 3 checks that we're uncertain about, or looks like we need to do more investigation, then they can do additional checks. But just as a baseline, those are the 3 checks that we're going to do. So once you, as Alaking, have given all of the details to that business, they can then go off and verify that information, and everything comes back to say, yes, the bank account is active, it is valid, it is with this bank. You are who you say you are, and the business is registered. We're good to go. They can onboard you, and off you go.
Okay, awesome. And just another question quickly. So I know that you only work with those 5 categories of like accountable businesses or businesses that have to be held accountable. But for any other ordinary business, is there any way that we can come to Minivation and get the sort of assistance that we need in terms of, finding out if we are, needing to comply to certain regulatory policies or anything like that?
Absolutely. So there are actually 2 legs to the business, because we do get that question quite a lot. So although the core business focus is on the digital compliance officer and specifically in enabling effective and efficient due diligence reporting, we do have a professional services arm as well, because quite often, especially with smaller businesses, startups, SMEs, guys that are still getting their heads around what needs to be done within their context within their industry, they come to us and say, look, we don't know if we need to be doing this due diligence. Can you help with that? So absolutely, we can help and we can guide and we can say, look, legally, you don't have to, you're not obliged to, but from a risk management point of view, you might want to look at these aspects, you might want to do that. And sometimes that leads us into the client going, okay, cool, we can do all of that cool stuff and we can document that and we can just formally agree that. And then they say, cool, then let's move on to the digital compliance officer. Or they say, that's cool, that's all we wanted, and off we go. So we, my background has been in advisory. So I've been a management consultant for by the looks of things longer than you've been alive. But
how old do I look?
So no, the question is, how old am I? But that is always been the bread and butter, and we can absolutely help any business who might have concerns, or even if it's cool. Sometimes we'll get a call from a client and say, wow, we've just been notified by the regulator they're coming to do an inspection. Can you help? And we're like, right, what do you have in place for the regulator to inspect? And they're like, there's the problem. We don't. We're like, okay, so we started from scratch and off we go.
Gosh, and any sort of like major policies that that a lot of businesses, just generally speaking, have to comply with? Any sort of documents that, okay, even if you don't really have to do it, but these are certain documents, these are certain policies that you necessarily should be looking into, so you don't run
Yeah, look, it's your usual stuff, and in South Africa, especially with a lot of the friction being removed by SIP-C and your engagement with SIP-C and your annual returns and that sort of stuff. So we can help just with general governance related to that. But really where our area of specialization is very much in the regulated space. So we do, have knowledge around the Companies Act and the way in which that needs to be applied within organizations. We have experience when it comes to things like specific insurance regulations and banking regulations and the regulations that actually govern the asset management world. And that's over and above just simple. I say simple, it's not that simple, but due diligence. So we can assist in that and help with that. But the challenge with business is, if you don't have enough on your plate when you're running your own company or involved as a director in an organization, is also making sure that you stay on top of that stuff. And that's really where I think your blog and these kinds of things are really important, because it's all part of the education mechanism, right? And I do think, as a business owner and as someone who's driving an organization, that hunger for knowledge and just making sure that you are constantly looking out for new sources and whatever information is being published is key. So from our perspective, when you do start a business, there's certain loops and hoops that you have to jump through. And those things generally you'll need to repeat every now and then. Like everyone knows, there are 3 things in life that are certain, right? So death, taxes, and now I can't even remember the third. But and I know all of your viewers are going to be laughing at me for not remembering the third, because it's going to be an obvious one. But everyone knows you register for VAT, you pay your VAT bill. Otherwise, you're going to get into trouble with SARS, and that's not what you want to do. And it's that sort of thing. So for businesses, the key is to stay abreast with what's happening and look out, on the government portal and things for any new regulations or amendments and adoptions and things that are coming out. It's like POPI. So POPI is the big one that now everyone needs to be aware of, and it relates, it's very similar to like GDPR. There's some similarities between the two, or quite a few similarities between the two. So if you're engaging with clients and you are taking personal information from them, you need to know what you're going to do, because I can see, there have been a couple of instances as of late. One of the big credit bureaus in the country, and it's a global credit bureau, has been taken to task on a data breach that they had, and that was personal information that's been breached. So that was also in the press. It's been quite widely reported. So there's a lot happening out there, and businesses need to take note of those things, and then maybe have a bit of reflection and see if what you're seeing could be applied to your business. So that's also a great one. Nowadays with social media and LinkedIn and these kind of platforms being available, we're very quick to see businesses being hauled over the coals for data breaches or cyber breaches and cyber attacks and all that kind of stuff. And then as a result, there'll be commentary saying, well, they're going to get in trouble with this regulator or that regulator. So it's always good then to go, if that happened to me, would I be in trouble with that regulator? And then you go, okay, so maybe I need to take that seriously. So that's also a good way to look at this. So there can be positive out of other people's challenges, I guess.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, David. Okay, let us move on to the final question of the day, which is, so here at Alaking Creatives, we have adopted the strategy called the 5 Ones framework. And what I do really is I encourage all of my clients to choose one product or solution, market it to one customer avatar, through one traffic source, using one conversion method, and doing all of that for 1 year. And I'd be interested to know, how would Minivation apply this framework if they had to?
Well, as luck would have it, and unbeknownst to us, it appears we have been applying your framework already since inception. So you might need to pay us some royalties for testing your theory before you actually applied it. But yeah, quite simply, so it's quite easy. So our target avatar would be accountable institutions. Our solution would be the digital compliance officer. The platform, my primary platform at the moment is LinkedIn. So I am using LinkedIn quite extensively, but linked to that, I am doing a number of conferences. So I do a lot of talking at conferences as well. So for us, and it's been conversion around that. And then obviously linked to that is network, but network through LinkedIn, because, that's ultimately what the platform and the environment is for. So, that has been our strategy, and that's what we continue to do, and it's worked quite well for us so far.
Awesome. And hey, everyone, if Minivation can do it, so can you. And really, like, the reason why I thought of this strategy is because so many startups and businesses, like in small businesses, they think that they have to be everything to everyone, whereas that does not necessarily have to be the case. So I'm glad to know that Minivation is incorporating this framework into their business already. Okay, awesome. David, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we close off today's episode?
No, I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, and obviously all of your viewers, listeners out there, depending on the format that they're going to be consuming this in. It's been great chatting to you, and I love the idea, and I wish you luck with all your following and follow-up blogs. It's really cool.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. Cheers, guys. See you next time.